sunrise in Southern California on this day followed the type of warm, velvety night conducive to sleeping outdoors. The access roads near Carlsbad Raceway provided a barracks of sorts for thousands of race fans whose goal was position. A prime spot, once the gates opened, inside this maze-like course. And now the crowd is in place in this rugged terrain some 30 miles north of San Diego. As we look around the Carlsbad Raceway, the grandstand is packed. The hillsides are packed. So are the ravines and the gullies on a very hot day. The temperature approaching the 90-degree mark, and a big crowd. They estimated at about 30,000 looking on for the U.S. Grand Prix of Motocross. Hello again, everybody. I'm Al Michaels. Welcome to Carlsbad Raceway. This is the only Grand Prix motocross race held on American soil throughout the year. The Grand Prix circuit consists of a dozen races. They have completed 6 at various venues throughout the world, and halfway through the Grand Prix season, have a look now at the standings, and as you can see, it's a tight battle with Andre Malherbe of Belgium maintaining a very slight advantage. He is on top, but of course the crowd favorite today will be an American, any American, and last year they had their dream come true, watching Marty Moats, who grew up nearby, become the first American to win the U.S. Grand Prix of Motocross. He is back today to defend his title. This race is a complete adventure. Especially adventuresome is the start of the race, and down near the start is my colleague Sam Posey. Sam?
Al, the drama begins with a starting procedure that is among the most unusual in motorsport. Here's the way it works. The bikers line up side by side, literally shoulder to shoulder. They press the bikes up against a metal starting gate. You can see them there behind me now. The minute the starting gate goes down, they charge down this 150-yard straightaway toward where I'm standing. Then they'll have to funnel down into this extremely tight first turn. Only then do they go out onto the track itself. Let me emphasize, Al, they only use this part of the track just this once, right now at the start. After that, they're out on the track. Now, it's just a little over 2 minutes to go now before the start. Let's have a look at the track. The first thing you'll notice is that it's a brutally rugged surface. The track has every kind of pothole, ditch, and bump that you could possibly think of. This footage was shot for us earlier, by the way, by 6-time world champion Roger DeCoster, who's now retired but was willing to shoot this for us. That's the shifting there as Roger shifts with his foot. He's approaching a section called the Rattlesnake Gulch. It's just ahead of him here. It's named, I should say, not just because of the serpentine nature of the track at that point, but also because there are snakes that live right adjacent to the track there. The surface is hard California clay. They're riding up a section now called the Carlsbad Freeway, kind of a euphemism because, as you can see, it's not like a freeway at all. It's very, very rough. This is the highest point on the track, and from here, Roger begins this awesome descent. The track actually drops 10 stories in just 200 yards. At the bottom, he must brake very, very hard, slow the bike from 40, 50 miles an hour down to about 10 miles an hour. Here, Roger cuts through a deep ravine at the bottom of the valley. He's approaching a section called Devil's Drop. There it is. It's a 12-foot leap into the air, the last obstacle before the finish line. But of course, before they can get out onto the track, they have to make this very special start right through the area where I'm standing now, and there are very few seconds left to go. All of the riders have told me in the pits this morning how critical the start is, particularly on a hot day like this. They won't want to have to pass a lot of guys, so they're all going to try to get a real hole shot and get down here as fast as they can. In fact, in the last couple of minutes, the riders have been out here walking around, actually looking at the dirt over which they're going to have to ride. It's extremely important. It's coming up only seconds away. I am in the way of the riders, and I'm going to get out of here.
A good move by Sam Posey as we get set for the start of the first of 2 motos. There's the starter. Once that cart is turned sideways, the gate can come down at any moment to start the race. 37 motocross riders are ready for action as they head out toward the main part of the course, and it's Brock Glover who takes the initial lead. And look at that pack And already we've got several riders going down at the start. In that pack, that's number 42, Tim Crow from Vancouver, British Columbia, who is off his bike and now trying to get back out onto the course as Brock Glover assumes the initial advantage. Andre Malherbe, the defending world champion, is currently in second position as they head around the Serpentine course.
And Al, as you can see at the hairpin there, at the bottom of the screen, there's been an incident. Looks like 3 riders involved. I can't see any of their numbers from here. That yellow flag is just cautioning the other riders, but that incident occurred at the tail of the field. Not too many other people coming by after that. Now here is Brock Glover leading the race. It's an interesting thing, Al, when the Europeans come to this particular event to participate, because they're up against perhaps a half a dozen, maybe even 10 Americans. They never know who's going to be hot, who might beat them, and we've got that classic situation of one American running real hot against the guy that's leading the World Championship right now, Malherbe.
And it was Glover who got off to that immaculate start. Brock is from nearby El Cajon, 21 years old, and he's been able to maintain just about that sized advantage over Malherbe through much of the first lap here. The first of 2 motos that are equally weighted that will determine the winner of the United States Grand Prix.
Al, these motos will be over 40 minutes long each, and physical fitness plays an enormous role in this race. But here at the start, they're very fresh, and we're seeing all-out speed from these guys at this stage in the race. Here, Glover starts down this precipitous decline. It's a terrifying piece of roadway down which they charge with the throttle almost wide open. It just amazes me every time I see him do it. Of course, at the bottom, they have to clamp the brakes on as hard as they can. That only lasts for a couple of seconds, and then they start back up the hill again, Al, into a very tight hairpin here.
And it's been a very clean lap turned in by Glover thus far. We pointed out the importance of a clean start. And you go back to the start, coming out of the chute, it was Brock Glover who had the lead when they went on to the main part of the course, and he is right there now. It was Andre Malherbe who was second coming out of that chute, and he has maintained that position. And there is Marty Moats, who did not get off to a very good start, and he is well back in the pack. So early in this first moto, the leader is Brock Glover. Andre Malherbe is in second place. Chuck Sun has moved up to third position, and Brad Lackey of the United States is currently fourth here in Carlsbad. It's been a marvelous beginning for Brock Glover. Look at him flying as he has built up a very sizable early lead here in this first of 2 motos at the United States Grand Prix of Motocross. He has left the entire field in his wake at this point. A 3-way battle going on for second right now between Andre Malherbe, Chuck Sun, and Brad Lackey. The 3 of those men battling for that runner-up position at the moment. But to this point, it has belonged to Brock Glover on an oppressively hot Southern California afternoon. And we asked Brock earlier if he thought the heat would pose a problem.
Oh, a little bit. I'm wearing white jersey and a white helmet today to deflect the sun a little bit and not absorb the heat. But other than that, you know, I'm just basically used to the heat, so it should help me, where the European riders usually are used to maybe 70, 75-degree temperatures.
Because the riding of a motocross bike like this is such a frenzied-looking thing, Al, it's almost incredible to think about talking about technique, and yet these guys are using very specific techniques for specific parts of the course. For example, for coming out of a turn, they sit back on the bike to get traction. And when they're in a sharp turn, they want to be on the seat so they can put a foot out like that to help them balance. When they go over the leaps, they have to rise up on the foot pegs and use their legs literally as shock absorbers.
And now you've got Brad Lackey in the yellow moving into third place as he's able to pass Chuck Sun. So Brad has been moving up steadily. There's the 3-way battle for second. Andre Malherbe in white is trailing only Brock Glover, but you've got Lackey stalking Malherbe right now, and Chuck Sun, rider number 20, having dropped back to fourth place. And here comes Lackey trying to make a move on Malherbe, but Andre is able to stave him off, at least temporarily. But the 2 of them wheel to wheel at this point, as it appears Lackey is looking for just the right place, the right position on the track to make his move and try to move into second place, and he has done it. There he is. Brad Lackey is now in second position, and the Americans are running 1-2.
Oh, Lackey is hot right now, Al. You know, just 2 weeks ago, he won the French Grand Prix over in Europe. But at this particular event, he's under unique psychological pressure because, like Mario Andretti, Lackey is an American who has chosen to compete in Europe, and this has made him a hero here at home. So when he races here, great things are expected of him, and so far he's been unable to deliver. He's been in contention here year after year, only to have victory slip from his grasp. Last year, when an American finally won the USGP, it wasn't Lackey at all, but Marty Motes. And now it's Brock Glover who leads.
Glover, Lackey, and Malaire running 1, 2, 3 in this, the first moto in the U.S. Grand Prix of motocross. It's a fascinating sport, and earlier Sam put together a piece on riding technique and equipment.
The riding of a motocross bike over rough terrain is simultaneously graceful and utterly brutal. Here, Brock Glover exemplifies the apotheosis of the relationship between man and machine. The motocrosser turns his bike into an extension of himself, of his will to travel across the earth at incredible speeds. In that, he is like any other racer. The difference is a question of vehicle. Here you see A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis in a car of the most incredible sophistication. This car has a seat which is literally molded to Foyt's back. And this car, a Brabham Grand Prix machine, goes a step further in that even the steering wheel is designed to the particular dimensions of its driver's hands. Well, as I think you can see now, we've come to a very different kind of machine altogether. It's a motocross bike. And if you think after looking at the Indianapolis car and the Grand Prix car, that it looks a little simplistic or even a little bit crude, I wouldn't blame you a bit. The idea of a rider being fitted to this machine in the way you'd be fitted to an Indianapolis car, say, seems absurd. But I think you might be surprised. For example, these handlebars are not just handlebars. They can be varied in length like this, the amount that they tip up toward or away from the rider. The top riders will have several different handlebars, and they'll choose from them for different tracks. Also, the seat can be varied in height, so that the rider will be at different heights relative to the handlebars and to the rest of the bike. One of the first things a rider does when he tries a new bike is to establish the right positioning for this foot peg, which can either be lower than this or higher, further forward or further back. Once he decides, his own special foot peg is made up for him. The objective, of course, is that it be in the right relationship with this lever here, which operates the rear brake like this. On the other side of the bike is another custom-fitted foot peg, and this is the shifter. The way that works is, first gear is one click down, like that. And the other 4 gears, and there are 5 gears altogether, are engaged by the rider putting his foot under the shifter and lifting up, like that. Now, each time a shift is completed, the shifter returns to the same basic position. The clutch must also be adjusted to suit a particular rider's taste. The question of how far out the lever is from the handle here, and how far up and down it is. Some riders like to grip it with all 4 fingers like that. Others just flick it with 2 fingers. This is the assembly for the front brake lever here and for the throttle, which as you see is rotated like that. Now, riders have different preferences. Some of them like the full throttle to be opened with just a small twist of the throttle, others a bigger twist. Now, you'll notice looking across the front of the bike, there are absolutely no instruments at all. No tachometer. The biker shifts by ear. No oil pressure gauge, nothing. Only this kill switch that turns the engine off in case of emergency. So what is the value of this machine? That may surprise you a bit too. This bike costs $75,000 and weighs just a little over 200 pounds. That makes it, pound for pound, about 2.5 times as expensive as an Indianapolis car. And one last thought. When you realize that the braking, shifting, and steering are all performed simultaneously, it gives you some idea of the coordination required to ride a machine like this.
And as we get back to the action, there is one man who won't have to worry about coordination in this first moto because he has had a mechanical breakdown. That is Marty Motes, the favorite of so many in this large crowd here at Carlsbad Raceway. And Marty Motes is taking his machine back into the pit, so he is effectively out of the first moto and effectively out of any contention for the overall championship. Brock Glover is still the leader. Brad Lackey is second. Andre Malaire is third. Chuck Sun running fourth. As we return to the United States Grand Prix of motocross, the Americans still running 1-2. Number 23, Brock Glover is the leader as they head up the Carlsbad Freeway, make the turn into the downhill section of the course. There is Glover. Brad Lackey in second place. And earlier, Sam talked to Lackey about the challenge of the downhill.
But as I understand it, although it'd be spectacular, you really don't want to let the bike sail out too far. You want to get it back down on the ground so you can get traction again.
That's right. With the traction, you're going to have a better time. And again, when you're in the air, you can't brake and you can't turn, so you have that problem if there's an accident in front of you or something like that.
Yeah.
So since we land 50 feet down the hill off the jump, we accelerate another 1 or 2 seconds, and then we start the braking on the steepest part of the downhill just before the 180-degree turn.
And that looks extremely treacherous there. I mean, it's steep, as you said, but it's also very bumpy.
Well, with the speed from the jump and the momentum from the top of the hill, it is very difficult to stop. And with the bumps, it makes it, again, hard when the wheels are off the ground. You can't brake, so that's the hardest part, to slow down in time to make the corner. And that's the reason some people miss the turn.
Okay, and I understand last year you didn't do it right.
No, I had some problems. I had a tight inside line, and I kind of lost concentration and drifted out a little bit and was going through the bumps where I couldn't brake or turn, and I overshot the corner and cost me second overall for the day last year and possibly the World Championship.
Well, no such problems today for Brad Lackey on Bike 2. And Lackey has really picked up a considerable amount of ground on Brock Glover. He had a very large early lead, but as you can see, it is growing slimmer and slimmer. Glover still able to maintain the top spot as he had since the very first lap on Bike 23. But here comes Lackey as the Americans continue to run first and second. And Glover knows that Lackey's just behind him. Glover almost comes off his bike, almost lost it. Lackey just about pulls even with him, but Brock seems to have it back. But now Lackey moves into the lead, but there's Glover on the inside, and the two side by side, and now it is Lackey moving on top. So Lackey has the lead for the first time in the race. Here comes Glover again, but Brad is able to maintain the top spot.
Incredibly tight competition, and it makes you wonder, when two guys are running that close to each other, what sort of informs them as to how close the other guy is and whether they can afford to cut across in front of him. Let's have another look at that dramatic pass for the lead. Now, at this point, Glover is in the lead there on the left, Lackey coming up on the right. But this is where Glover comes off the pegs of his bike. It's a brutal moment for him physically. He loses momentum and Lackey sweeps up alongside. All right, now at this point, they are literally side by side. How do they know the other is there? Is it a question of sensing him? Probably that more than anything, because we don't see either man look toward the other. They just seem to know instinctively where the other rider is. Now at this point, Lackey does briefly check to see if Glover is there, but that's because he needs to cut back across in front of him.
Remarkable that Glover was able to remain on his bike and still very much in contention, but Lackey is the leader right now with Glover second. Malherbe and Son have dropped back. Håkan Karlqvist of Sweden is now third. Graham Noyce of Great Britain has moved into fourth place. Less than 2 laps to go in the first moto of the U.S. Grand Prix of Motocross in Carlsbad, California. Brad Lackey in yellow. Number 2 is the leader. Brock Glover, who has led through much of this first moto, is in second place. So a good battle as we come down to the end of this one. By the way, Andre Malherbe, the defending world champion from Belgium, fell off his bike and he has gone back to the pit. So he is out of the running for the United States Grand Prix Championship. But a good battle going on right here.
Well, Lackey had the speed, of course, to come up and pass Brock, but he's not been able to pull away. This might have something to do, Al, with the fitness thing. I mean, you charge through the pack, you get the lead, you've got daylight out ahead of you. What happens then? Do you try to relax a little bit and start to save yourself, maybe? Glover obviously is counter-attacking here, and we've got a very dramatic race on our hands.
Brock Glover trying to make his move. He is stalking Lackey now. Earlier, of course, it was Brock who nearly fell off his bike. he would have been out of contention. But here he is trying to make the move on Lackey. On the inside he goes. He had him for the moment. Lackey winds up going into the fence on the outside. And down goes Brad. So Brad Lackey, with victory perhaps just moments away, all of a sudden in major difficulty right now, and Brock Glover appears to have smooth sailing on his way to the finish line on this, the closing lap.
What a stunning turn of events for Brad Lackey. I mean, it seemed at least to have first or second wrapped up. It's a very eerie repetition of what happened to him here last year.
It certainly is, and he's back on the track at the moment, but he has dropped all the way back to 6th place with Brock Glover in the lead by a substantial margin as we take a look back at the crash.
Let's see if we can figure out what happened. You see Glover coming up inside him here, but Brad's in good shape. He's going on that berm there, which is a very good move to make. He accelerates hard, Glover right inside him. But now, as he hits these whoop-de-doos, that front wheel suddenly cocks out. Still, he seems to have a chance to maintain control, but then he gets into that fence, that thin wire mesh fence, and that's what brings him down. That was a matter of inches. He could have pulled that thing out if he could have kept the bike about 6 inches to the left.
Brock Glover, who took the lead early. Remember, he came out of that chute in great shape, had the lead through most of the race, was overtaken by Lackey, and then in the battle that has just ensued, it was Glover who becomes the survivor, and Lackey who drops well back in the pack. As I say, currently running in 6th position as Brock Glover, if he can maintain his balance and remain on that bike for another couple of 100 yards, he will be the winner. That's Carlton Carlsbad on bike number 3, who is in 2nd place, and Graham Noyce of Great Britain is currently 3rd. This is the first of 2 motos to determine the United States Grand Prix motocross champion. Brock Glover from El Cajon, California, at the age of 21, approaching the finish line. And the big crowd here at Carlsbad Raceway saluting him as Brock Glover takes the checkered flag. Carlton Carlsbad of Sweden coming across the line and finishing in 2nd place. And Graham Noyce of Great Britain winds up 3rd. Well, that man is not only tired, but he is very frustrated. Brad Lackey, with victory seemingly in hand, totally spent, totally enervated, winds up in 6th place in the first moto. The winner, 21-year-old Brock Glover, and Sam's with him now.
Brock, you look in really good shape. How did the first moto go?
Oh, it went, picture perfect for me, except I didn't want Brad to get around me, but he definitely came up and I made a mistake and he passed me. But then once again, I just tried to hold on to his pace, and then, I set him up for the downhill pass, and right at the bottom I cut underneath him, and then I started to move out with him, and it looked like he overshot the bank or something, maybe clipped the fence or something, he threw him down. But he tried to, I think,
Did you see that?
I could see it out of the corner of my eye, but it looked like he just tried a little extra effort that maybe wasn't necessary or something. I don't know.
Do you think the heat was bothering him?
Oh, I think the heat bothers everybody. It's so hot out there. It's funny, it's not as bad inside. It's probably only 90 out, but the thing is, once you're in the, you're racing suits, plus out on the track, it seems like there's just, no air, because maybe the spectators and everything block the wind from the course, but it's just something that's really hot out there.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
So the first moto is over. Brock Glover winning it, with Håkan Carlqvist winding up 2nd and Graham Noyce 3rd. We'll be back with coverage of the 2nd moto from Carlsbad a little later on ABC's Wide World of Sports. We are well into the 2nd of 2 motos at the U.S. Grand Prix of Motocross in Carlsbad, California. Al Michaels reporting along with Sam Posey, and there's the leader, Darrell Schultz, on bike number 28, a man who did not even finish the first moto, and neither did Andre Malherbe right there. Malherbe is currently 2nd in this race, and he complained of lower back problems between races, but he has been running very effectively here in this moto. And the man in 3rd place on bike number 20 is Chuck Sun, who finished 5th in the first race and is currently in 3rd position and stands a very good chance to win the overall title if he can maintain that position. Darrell Schultz riding despite a badly broken finger, and earlier Sam Posey talked with Darrell about it.
I was going along in practice yesterday and getting my lines all dialed in, getting my speed up, and I came out of a corner, drifted a little bit wide, and I hit a fence post with my hand, and I cut it to the bone on the knuckle here, and I think I fractured my finger, but I was kind of scared to get it x-rayed. So we had to get a grip today and bend it around and tape it in the form it's going to have to be in, because I can't bend it by myself. So we're just going to tape it to the grip and go for it.
What is this going to mean in the race?
Well, in the early part of the race, it won't bother me because I'll be concentrating so hard. But later in the race, when the pain gets too great, I might notice it. I might see a difference then.
Well, he's obviously been able to put it in the back of his mind through the early stages of the race, but not only does he have that to contend with, but also the oppressive heat, Sam.
The heat is going to affect different riders in different ways in this second moto, because some of them went very hard in the first. Others, like Darrell Schultz, were hardly in the first moto at all and have great reserves of energy.
So Schultz is the leader. Malherbe is running second. Chuck Sun is third. And Brad Lackey, who had the misfortune near the end of the first moto and wound up in 6th place, is currently in 4th position in the second moto, a moto that had a most inauspicious beginning.
Well, I'll say, here's what happened. Brad Lackey and Brock Glover decided to hang back and try to time the start perfectly. As you can see, it backfired on them completely. This became a false start with both of them tangled in the starting gate, and Andre Malherbe's bike is down there with the wheel actually jammed into the starting gate. The event is sanctioned by the American Motorcyclist Association, the AMA, and their officials ruled that that was a false start, decreed there should be a second one, which came moments later. It was an explosive start, and Darrell Schultz got a brilliant lead, a hole shot right out of that. By contrast, Brock Glover did not get a hole shot, got very bad traction, and is back in the middle of the pack as they swarm into that first turn. Glover, however, was clear of this accident.
But because of that bad start, he has not been a factor in this race. He is still well back in the pack. And Darrell Schultz, a non-finisher in the first moto, is the leader right here with Andre Malherbe of Belgium running in second place. So neither man running 1-2 would have a shot at the overall title. Right now, Chuck Sun is in very good shape, having finished 5th in the first moto. He is currently 3rd here. And here is Malherbe trying to move up on the back markers and close down on Schultz a bit.
What is making Schultz's performance all the more impressive to me is that before this race he had knee surgery and he has been unable to train, get his fitness up. You hardly know it now from the way he's riding. He rides loose, he rides very, very confidently. You can hardly tell he's going as fast as he's going because he is so relaxed on that bike.
He's 23 years old. In 1978, he was the Rookie of the Year, showed great potential. Last couple of years have been so-so for him, but he did have, as Sam just pointed out, the knee surgery, the broken finger, of course, today, and right now he is the leader as this race is winding down, the second and concluding moto in the United States Grand Prix here in Carlsbad. And Schultz begins to lose it, and into the crowd he goes, and he takes a couple of spectators with him. So Schultz, who had a big lead, goes down. It was Lackey who was leading in the first moto who crashed, and now the same fate befalls Schultz.
Wow, he got out of shape so suddenly there. He was going just great.
So Malherbe moves into the lead as we have another look at the crash here.
Well, let's see if we can figure out what happened. He comes out of that turn just fine. Hits that little ditch there. He still looks fine, Al. Just, wow, look at that. All of a sudden.
The back end comes out. Into the fence he goes. And a couple of spectators going down with him. So Malherbe has taken the lead on bike number 1. It moves Chuck Sun on bike number 20 into second place as the Grand Prix winds down here in Carlsbad.
One thing is so obvious in this sport: when something goes wrong, it happens instantaneously.
the second moto nearing its conclusion, it's Andre Malherbe still leading, but just barely. Chuck Sun in a good battle with Malherbe for the top spot, and Brad Lackey, who finished 6th in the first moto, has moved up to 3rd, but Sun is bearing down on Malherbe.
These two raced just this close to each other in the first moto. So this is a repeat of the duel. It's surprising this deep in the race that they would have this much energy for this racing.
Chuck Sun side by side and has taken the lead on a beautiful move to the inside. Chuck Sun, a Chinese-American who was born in Kansas City and now makes his home in Sherwood, Oregon, is out in front.
Well, his performance this late in a very long, hot day, to me, attests to the obvious vast supplies of strength which he has.
So Chuck Sun seeking the overall championship, having finished very well. He finished in 5th position in the first moto, is the leader here. A beautiful move by Sun to get by Malherbe.
Oh, it's a classical pass, Al. Chuck, after he comes down from the air here, is on the inside as they come into this sharp left-hand turn. Malherbe is just a little bit wide, and Chuck Sun, with no drama at all, just takes the shorter route, catches the berm there as they leave, and accelerates away.
Chuck Sun finished 5th in the first moto, one of 4 racing brothers, a man who had a sensational year in 1980. He was the 500cc national champion, so he is no stranger to victory lane, and he's really pulling well out in front now of Malherbe.
The crowd loves it, and I think of course, Malherbe has a big cushion over 3rd place in turn, so he's just slowing. It's only half a mile now to the finish. I don't think we'll see any changes in order now.
24-year-old Chuck Sun on his way toward the finish line. He was in contention for the lead early on in the first moto, then faded, wound up 5th, but could very well have been conserving some energy because he has run a very steady, well-paced race here in the second moto, and right now he is just a few yards away from the finish line. A little salute to the crowd as he comes over the last whoop-de-doo and takes the checkered flag. Chuck Sun winning the second moto and winning the overall title. Andre Malherbe of Belgium just crossing the finish line, winding up in 2nd place, and Brad Lackey finishes 3rd. Now, 2 key points in this race. Darrell Schultz was the leader, and he had a large margin at this point. All of a sudden, all by himself, losing it, back wheel coming out, and into the fence he goes, and that took him out of the race when it looked like he would have a relatively easy victory. The other key point coming late in the race with Malherbe on top in the white uniform, number 1, Chuck Sun coming down on the inside, and in classic fashion, Chuck Sun able to move by Malherbe, and from this point on, the entire race belonged to Chuck Sun. So Sun is the winner of the U.S. Grand Prix of Motocross, and Sam Posey is with him.
Congratulations. Second American ever to win the USGP.
Feels good.
It was a brilliant ride. It was terrific when you caught Malherbe. How did that go?
I knew I had to beat Brad to win overall, and I saw him coming up, so I said, I'm going to give it my all. And when I kept pushing, I kept catching Andre. And then I caught him, and
You made a fantastic pass down by the pits.
it felt good. I passed him, and then you could see that he was getting tired, and I didn't shake him right away. He was holding right there, so I just gave it everything I got. I tried really hard, and I was starting to get sick to my stomach.
How about the heat?
I knew that we might have a bit of an advantage over the Europeans, so I just kept hanging on, but it hit me too. I'm feeling it right now. I'm really tired, but it was worth the effort.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Here's the way they finished overall. The 2 motos cumulative standings. Chuck Sun, the winner. Brad Lackey finishes 2nd. Graham Noyes 3rd. Brock Glover, who was the winner of the first moto, finished 11th in the second and wound up 6th overall. Now this is Al Michaels along with Sam Posey saying so long from Carlsbad, California.